And welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. Coming up on our program, we kick off a Bay Area media collaboration focusing on homelessness with a look at those on the streets in San Jose and the impact of the Orlando mass shooting on San Francisco Pride celebrations this weekend. But first, a closer look at the scandals that have rocked the Oakland Police Department. At least 14 officers are under investigation in a sexual misconduct case involving a teenager. The city has also opened investigations into other police misconduct allegations, including racist texts sent by officers. Oakland has lost 3 police chiefs within 9 days amid the turmoil, and now some are questioning Mayor Libby Schaaf's ability to lead. The mayor sat down with us yesterday for a Bay Area exclusive one-on-one interview. Mayor Schaaf, thanks so much for being on the program. When and how did you first learn about the alleged sexual relationships between the Oakland police officers and the teenage sex worker?
I learned about them in March from the city administrator, Sabrina Landreth, but this is the type of incident that I should have been briefed on earlier, and that's why we are not just investigating the misconduct, but also the investigative process.
Oakland has had 3 police chiefs in 9 days. It currently has no chief. The city administrator is overseeing the department. Did you have a succession plan in place when you let Chief Sean Went go?
The fact that Sean went very quickly, that was not anticipated. And so we made decisions that we thought were the best at the moment. I have said that it was a mistake on my part to bring Ben Farrow in without having completely vetted him prior to announcing his appointment. But I do have confidence in our city administrator. Again, this is an appropriate time to exert some civilian oversight over the department, but also of the men and women of the police department itself. They are just as outraged and disgusted by this scandal as I am.
Can you tell us why the 3rd chief, Paul Figueroa, quit?
Chief Figueroa submitted his resignation, stating that he was unable to perform the duties of the job.
Did he say why?
He did not go into details, and I know that it has been frustrating for the public, and believe me, it's frustrating for me.
Did you ask him for details?
Can I finish answering your question without interruption?
Sure.
Thank you. It has been frustrating for the public, and it is frustrating for me that state law prohibits the sharing of personnel information of a police officer, and that protection extends to the chief. And so I have been as open and transparent as I am legally allowed to be, but it is frustrating that the public will never understand all the details.
Do you think sexual misconduct personnel files should be made available to the public? Currently, state law bars it from being made public.
I believe that there's a lot of room for improvement to the current levels of protection that police officers have to their privacy. I believe that the public does have a right to know more than they are getting to know right now.
So State Senator Mark Leno now is considering putting forth a measure before voters that would allow that, give more public access to misconduct and discipline files for law enforcement officers. Is that something you would campaign for?
It's something that I will give careful consideration to, particularly in light of the experience that I have had over the last month.
There are 3 officers whose reputations have been tarnished in some respects because of this. Do you have any second thoughts about how you handled this situation?
I do things that I believe are in the best long-term interest of the city of Oakland. Sometimes that feels painful in the short term, but I always look to the long-term interest of my hometown.
Your office is now is investigating who leaked information, particularly to the media. Is that the best way to use resources and time?
Typically, the public learns about these types of offenses when someone is arrested or charges are brought. We are still in the middle of this investigation, but because the media has publicized a certain version of events, when we conduct an interview of a witness after that publicity has been released, a lawyer can later use that fact to discredit the testimony of the witness. And that is why we believe it's in the public's interest to not share these types of details about the investigation until it's completed.
It's become evident that this sexual misconduct had been going on for a while, and a lot of people within the department seemed to know about it, and yet no one came forth to tell you about it.
I have talked a lot this week about what I believe is a toxic macho culture. And that's why it's important we not just look at our recruiting and screening practices, not just at who is becoming a police officer, but the culture once they're in the department, a culture of not coming forward and reporting misconduct. That is something that I'm very serious about getting underneath and reforming.
Some community groups are also calling for your resignation. Your response?
This is a great democracy. I love being an American because people are free to protest, to criticize their elected officials. That is part of the democratic process. I similarly am hearing tremendous amounts of support from the community who appreciate the stance that I've taken, who have confidence in the action plan that we have put forward, and know that they are represented by someone who cares deeply about this city.
And I take it then, for the record, you have no plans to resign.
I am not planning to resign at this time, no.
This scandal comes as the department is still trying to end 13 years of federal monitoring. That's due to the brutality and false police reports that were brought forth in the Riders case. Why should Oakland residents have any confidence that the department's problems can be fixed under your administration?
Well, it is frustrating. I think it is known that we were actually in negotiations around ending the court oversight when this scandal broke. And obviously, this does set back those discussions.
Do you think that perhaps it's time for the police department to be placed under federal receivership? Would the Oakland residents be better served?
No, the Oakland residents are best served when the people that they elected to run the city are in fact running it.
Looking back over your past year and a half as mayor, especially over the past 2 weeks, is there anything that you wish you had done differently?
I feel very good about every decision that I have made, and we have continued to make our decisions in the best long-term interest of this city and through our values of openness, honesty, and integrity. And that clarity of vision and commitment has very much helped guide me through these last difficult 2 weeks and will continue to guide me in everything I do as the mayor of Oakland.
Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And now, turning to a regional issue. This week, KQED is part of a media collaboration focusing on homelessness. We kick that off with a look at those on the streets in San Jose. Like elsewhere in the Bay Area, rents have skyrocketed there. The average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment is around $2,800 a month, according to the city. I went to San Jose for a closer look.
San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley, sits in one of the wealthiest regions in the country. Yet homelessness remains a persistent problem. This stretch of road in East San Jose looks like an average suburban street, but look closer and you'll find a modern nomadic village.
So you got this how long ago?
About 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And how much did it cost you?
I paid $690 for it. Mm-hmm.
So for now it's home?
For now it's home.
Can we take a look inside?
Sure.
Okay. This is where you sleep every night?
Yes, this is where I sleep.
Okay.
Sleep back there.
Joseph Lupretti says he's never been homeless before, an experience he sums up in one word.
Humbling. All the things that you normally take for granted, like your showers and going to the bathroom, I mean, everything is just a huge ordeal. You know, I mean, like today I got to go to work at 5, but I don't have a washer and dryer, I don't have a shower, I don't have any, place to shave. So the other day I got kicked out of the apartment complex with my head half shaved. They said they were going to call the police if I didn't leave. So I didn't have power and I had to go to work with my head half shaved. It was just embarrassing.
Lupretti works nearly full-time as a valet parking cars.
It's hard to go to work every day and come home to that.
Lupretti says he'd like to leave California for someplace more affordable, but he's on probation and must stay in Santa Clara County. He makes $2,500 a month and doesn't see how he can afford a place.
There's a big gap between the upper class and the middle class, and I really don't even think that there is a middle class. I mean, the crappiest house you'll see in San Jose is $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. It would take me all of my monthly income to pay for rent.
Just up the street from Lupretti, we find Kiva Van Winkle living inside another camper.
My abode.
She says she and her boyfriend lost their home more than a year ago.
The owners came in and doubled the rent and evicted us.
Now, Van Winkle rents this camper from a friend.
$100 a month.
$100 a month, and you have a little dog here. I see. Is that your dog?
He's protective, yes, that's Shorty.
What is it like living in this space?
It's
now?
uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. And I try to keep it as clean as I can. There's nowhere to park for the trailers and the motorhomes.
So are you always having to be on the move every day?
Harassed all the time.
And how long have you been living in this trailer?
For approximately 4 months. Now, before that, we were living in cars. We were staying here and there.
Throughout San Jose, there are an estimated 4,000 homeless people, some of whom seek shelter in the 140 miles of creek and riverbeds. We found this massive pile of garbage, apparently left over from one such encampment.
They go really deep in.
Yeah, they go deep because they don't want to be found.
Tony Harrison is with Downtown Streets Team, a homeless outreach agency. He leads me down a trail along Coyote Creek. We cross over the creek and up a steep embankment.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I got it.
Before finding 2 tents.
How many other homeless people are there along this creek bed?
Oh, there's a trail.
So this is like 5 and 6, 7 miles worth of people who are homeless, who are just living
Yes,
along
just
the
living
creek.
along the bank in the creek, yes. That's why we need more help and more awareness of homelessness.
The nation became aware of San Jose's problem in 2014. That is when the Jungle, one of the largest homeless encampments in the country, made national headlines. The city shut it down, moving an estimated 300 people out and fencing off the area. Leonard Jackson says he spent 5 years living in the Jungle.
And where did you live?
I'm like about right here.
So what did you have here when you were living here? What
Well,
did
it
it
was
look like?
built on pallets, and we had, sticks and tarps, and at the time I was here, it was just, it was bad,
So how did you end up homeless?
Honestly, to be real with you, it had a lot to do with drugs. It had, a lot of things that I regret to this day.
Many in the Jungle struggled with drugs and mental health issues, but Jackson says there were plenty of people who were working and barely surviving.
What kinds of jobs, do you know?
I know people that work for Google. I know some people that work for Cisco. I know some people that work for IBM. I know some people that had some really good jobs that lived out here with us.
And they were homeless.
Right here in the Jungle with us.
Jackson says the Jungle's closure opened doors as outreach workers helped him get off drugs, into a home, and find a job.
It's just by the grace of God, you people came along and you saved a lot of us. I could say that. I could say that, honestly, with a whole heart, that you saved a lot of us, Here, let me show you my new place. This is all right.
Oh, this is home now.
This is home. That's my mom right there. I mean, I really love my little place. I enjoy it. It beats the Jungle. It's way better than the Jungle.
And you got your first paycheck recently.
I got my first paycheck yesterday.
Congratulations.
Yes. In fact, I think I have the thing right.
Oh, you do?
Where is it? I want to show
Let's
that thing.
see that first paycheck.
Let's see that first paycheck right there.
And the first of what he hopes will be many more steps forward.
It feels great. It feels hecka great, to have my own place, a job, security. I mean, it's like I feel like I'm on top of the world.
And joining me now is Ray Bramson, San Jose's homelessness response manager, to discuss this further. Ray, thank you for being here. So we had a happy ending so far for Leonard Jackson, but many others are still waiting for homes. More than 4,000 homeless in San Jose. That's a lot of people. How many of them are on the street every night without shelter?
So San Jose, like the rest of California, experiences a challenge that we have a lot of unsheltered people. So over 70% of our homeless population, about 2,800 people, are living on our streets, along our creeks, and along our interstates.
And is that because there aren't enough shelter beds in the city and county?
Shelter beds are part of the challenge. The other issue is, San Jose has a small urban core. We've got long stretches of creek to the east and west. There's a lot of places where people can get out of sight, find protected areas, and live outside.
So then what are you doing about this? The city says it evicted about 300 people from the jungle. How many of them have you been able to place in housing?
So we understand encampments are just a symptom of a much larger challenge, which is homelessness. And we've invested significantly over the past few years in finding housing solutions to get people inside. So from the jungle, we've now housed over 200 individuals who in different places throughout the community.
And what kinds of places, what kinds of housing did you find for them?
A wide variety of housing, everything we can in the market that we have. So some folks are living in shared housing, sharing bedrooms. Other people have been able to locate apartments and secure jobs and increase their income. It's wherever we can find a safe, stable place for people to live.
And is there any thought about perhaps maybe finding a place where people can park their cars or their RVs? Because so many people we found, especially in East San Jose, were just living out of their cars.
Absolutely. Just in San Jose, we have over 500 people in the last point in time count that we found living in their vehicles. So one of the solutions the city's looking at is trying to find safe parking lots where people can park, get connected to services, and then hopefully get hooked on to long-term housing and services.
And how far along are you in that process? Have you identified a site?
You know, we've identified a partner, and we're trying to work through some of the issues to create a pilot site. Other communities throughout California have been working on this, and we think there's some promise.
Help us understand, who are the homeless in San Jose? Is there a typical profile?
Yeah, there's no one face to homelessness. It's a wide variety of people. San Jose has over 30% of its homeless population, which are chronically homeless people, folks that have been on the street for a long time and have a severe mental or physical disability. But there's people with jobs, their families, their youth transitioning out of foster care, and there's veterans returning from wars.
And so what are you doing to help them? What can you realistically do? Because the city has housing vouchers, but even those who have housing vouchers, 800 people currently are on the waiting list with vouchers with no place to go.
Yeah. The reality is there just isn't enough housing. Our vacancy rate for rental properties in San Jose is hovering just around 4%. People can't find units in the market. So what we need to do more than anything is build more affordable housing with the supportive services that are needed to keep those people stable and safe.
Well, we hear that in so many cities throughout the Bay Area, right? We need to build more affordable housing. But what can you do currently? Because that's sort of more of a long-term thing. It takes time to make that happen. What can you do currently within the budget you have to more effectively serve the population?
So last year, the city invested nearly $35 million in over 750 long-term and short-term housing opportunities. So we're looking at every tool we possibly can, rehabbing old hotels and motels, buying manufactured housing, which is assembled off-site, and then bringing it to an area, trying to find different bridge approaches to get people off the streets now so that we can build the long-term solution.
And is that bridge approach effective? If you just give them a little bit of shelter, even if it's temporary, is that enough to get them on the path toward a long-term recovery and where they can be self-sufficient?
Well, we need to make sure that that bridge housing that we provide has services and that there is light at the end of the tunnel for them. So we can't give them a place to go and say, you're not going to have a permanent home in our community. So we need to make sure that they have that destination in mind when we place them there.
And just real quickly, I want to point out that this week the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors unanimously agreed to place a bond measure on the November ballot that would raise $950 million for affordable housing. Will that be enough to address the problem?
The measure by the Board of Supervisors was historic. $950 million for affordable housing, a lot of that dedicated specifically to homeless populations, is one of the biggest steps our community has ever taken towards addressing this crisis head on.
All right. Ray Bramson with San Jose's Housing Department, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Thuy.
San Francisco is gearing up for a weekend of gay pride events, but the recent mass killing of 49 people at a gay dance club in Orlando has led to an outpouring of grief and anxiety in the LGBT community. Still, there's a determination not to let the tragedy disrupt this year's festivities. KQED senior editor for California Politics and Government, Scott Schaefer, has more.
With me now are Rebecca Rolfe, Executive Director of the San Francisco LGBT Community Center, and Mark Leno, a Democrat who represents San Francisco in the state Senate. Welcome to both of you. Well, it's been just a couple weeks since the events in Orlando, and many people still very much reeling from that. And I'm wondering, each of you, and I'll start with you, Rebecca, what's the takeaway, do you think, from what happened and what's happened since?
Well, I think, as we know, our community really has a long history with violence. That's very unfortunate and very sad. And I think that this event is really resonating for a lot of people about their own experiences, about fears that they have about their own safety. But I know that as we head into this weekend, that people are more determined than ever to really be loud, be visible, be out there, really be proud of who we are, and really demonstrate that this incident will not really take away anything from our community, and that we will, in fact, continue to be strong and continue to be proud.
Mark, what would you add to that? Because, you know, we've also saw like an outpouring of support for the LGBT community around the world, something that might not have happened a few years ago. So, silver lining, or, you know, what's your takeaway?
Well, let's not forget that this kind of violence, any kind of violence, doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in a context, a social and political context. And part of that context, for example, this tragic irony that the very survivors of this tragedy, HIV-negative gay men, cannot donate blood to their fallen brothers and sisters who are in need of it, because our federal government bases a regulation not on fact, but on prejudice and fear that there's something dangerous about the blood running through my veins. And that communicates to people that there's something dangerous and wrong about us.
Are you saying, though, you say the political context, are you saying, I was starting to fill in the blanks there, are you saying that the presidential campaign, there's been a lot of violence at Donald Trump rallies, for example? I mean, are you saying that that perhaps is
That's all a part of it. You had the lieutenant governor of the state of Texas on his website saying immediately after the tragedy, quoting from the New Testament, "Man shall reap what he sows," as if the victims were guilty of something and worthy of their murder.
Pride is a huge event in the Bay Area, as it is in many places like New York and elsewhere, LA. How do you think the events of Orlando should affect the tone of this weekend's events, Rebecca?
I think this weekend, I think there'll be a level of somberness, and or you know, as people really look at acknowledging those who have fallen, and also really acknowledging that we still have a long way to go in our community. That a year ago we were celebrating, you know, the passage of marriage throughout the country, and this year it's a somber reminder that we have a lot of room still to travel, and you know, a lot of challenges that we face as a community.
Would you say, Mark, that you know, that decision, I mean, it's almost a year to the day that the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage across the country. Any sense at all in your mind that what happened in Orlando is in some ways a result of that, and what's been happening nationwide in terms of changing attitudes and laws and a move toward equality?
There's always backlash, there's always pushback. Let's keep in mind, though, this was one deranged, sick young man. Just that. He caused a lot of damage. He's upset the entire nation and attained the attention of the whole world. But it was one guy. But with regard to the celebrations this weekend, I think, if anything, we are a resilient community. Yeah. And it is an opportunity for us, and I think this is almost subconscious, to show the world we know how to party, we know how to come back, we know how to show our pride, our strength, and our joy in living.
One of the maybe unanticipated consequences of all this is that a group called Pink Pistols has gotten a lot of attention. It's an LGBT group that is promoting guns as for self-defense. And their membership on Facebook has vastly grown since this happened. And they're saying, their message is, look, if you don't have a gun, you're going to be a victim. What are your thoughts?
You know, if anything, by definition, we are a part of every community. We're a part of every ethnic community. We're a part of every age group, of every religion. Every community has us within them. The same can be said for those who promote weapons.
And so would you advocate getting a gun, or do you think that's a bad idea?
I think it's a personal choice. I think clearly, you know, there's a lot of evidence that shows that the proliferation of guns results in this kind of violence. I think more importantly, that there's a toxic environment that gets created when we do have an agenda of hate, and Mark referred to that. And there is sort of a very active promotion of an agenda of hate by the religious and political and social conservatives.
I heard
that combined with guns.
I heard the president actually respond to something that a member of the Pink Pistols said, which was that, and I think it was a transgender woman, said that people should be allowed to carry firearms into bars and nightclubs. And there's a law that prohibits that if 50% of your sales comes from alcohol. The idea that we would have guns where alcohol is being served, the president said that it's a ridiculous notion.
There will be, because of this, much more law enforcement. There's going to be metal detectors, screening as you go into Civic Center. And I'm just wondering how you feel about that, because the LGBT community has had sometimes a tense relationship with law enforcement. Black Lives Matter, in fact, who is going to be one of the community grand marshals today, pulled out of that because they felt threatened by all of the police presence there. What do you think? What do you make of that?
That is, it is unfortunate, and it's an unfortunate reality. One little curious twist of it is that I understand there will be greater numbers of undercover officers in gay clubs and in gay bars. And for years, of course, there were undercover officers there to harass us and to beat us up. Now they're there to protect us.
Well, and in that regard, President Obama today announced that the Stonewall Inn in New York, which really began the modern gay rights movement, is going to be declared a national monument. Talk about coming full circle, huh?
That's right. And there is now an all-gender bathroom in the White House. So we are making enormous strides. And I think it's important to keep that perspective in mind as we also acknowledge that there continues to be a significant level of violence and discrimination.
Real quickly, Mark, your thoughts for this weekend. What do you hope comes from it?
Everyone be safe. Everyone be aware. We have to be vigilant. It's unfortunate. It's the state of the world right now. Keep your eyes open. Report anything that you see that doesn't look right. But otherwise, it's our Pride weekend. Have a great time, of course.
Happy Pride weekend to both of you. State Senator Mark Leno, Rebecca Rolfe from the SF LGBT Community Center. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
And that does it for us. I'm Thuy Vu. Thanks so much for watching. For all of KQED's news coverage, please go to kqednews.org.